us. And this is an opportunity for us to start discussing some of the issues that pertain to human rights, to the rights of people that are most vulnerable in society. So, in a couple of minutes, we'll be starting this event. I will have in our midst our partners from Migrant Resource Center, and we also have our chief host here, the person of Sandra Vermuijten, who is the head of program of the Centers for Migration and Development. Please join me in we also have here our invited guests and partners. We have from the Nigerian-German Congress, the Deputy General Secretary of Ismail Bello. In a short period, we have a session for the panelists to discuss the topic. Also, please permit me if I go through the floor. I would also like to recognize the presence of the Benson Kumba, the acting General Secretary of the Nigerian-German Congress. And a short while we'll be taking solidarity message from him. And also having our Miss Comrade Martha John, the chairperson of the LSC Youth Committee. Comrade Martha, you're welcome. Please let us applaud that. I would also like to recognize the presence of our partner from the Federal Ministry of Labor and Employment, the person of Dr. Sunday Onasi. Welcome, sir. In a short while, also we'll be taking the keynote address that will be taken by Dr. Emeka Obiazu. And this is also an opportunity to recognize his presence. You are welcome, sir. Dr. Emeka Obiazu is the National Coordinator of Civil Society Network of Migration and Development. We welcome you. We have a very distinguished guest, so numerous to mention. But I would like to recognize and welcome Comrade Emeka, who is the Program Manager of the Vermuijten. I also like to recognize Dr. Muta of the GIZ Education Committee. Ladies and gentlemen, we go now to the agenda for me. We have the agenda in the bags that have already been provided beside you, so you can flow with us. I will invite us to stand as we recite the national anthem.
Our
Before we proceed, I'd like to welcome address. But before that, I would like to invite our distinguished guests, panelists, to take their seats in front. Bello, please come and join Sandra here. You're welcome. I would also like to invite from the Migrant Resource Center, the Federal Ministry of People and Employment, Dr. Sandra, to come take a seat here too. You're welcome, sir. Please let us applaud him as he's joining us here. I would also like to invite to join us here, coverage the States James from the LSC people migration. So we will move immediately to the welcome address, which is going to be delivered by the head of program of the Centers for Migration and Development in Nigeria under the German Development Corporation. Maybe before I introduce her, I should mention that she is a friend of the union who has past experience in defending human rights and working in this area, in our mutual area of interest. So I have the pleasure of inviting to the podium Sandra Vermuijten.
Thank you so much, Wale, and good morning everyone, dear colleagues, comrades, partners, and of course representatives of Dr. Nazi and the leadership of the NLC, not just of the NLC as a whole, but also the youth members, the young members of the NLC. And I want to already disrupt the program immediately by inviting Martha John to join me here. She's the chair of the committee of the NLC, she's from the Union of Teachers of Nigeria. Yeah, I thought it was important that we would be opening this event together, because this is not an event for experts, by experts, for experts. It's an event that we are organizing in order to celebrate International Youth Day in collaboration with the Nigerian Labour Congress. As Wale has already mentioned, we represent the German Development Agency. We implement a program here in Nigeria on behalf of the German federal government and the Ministry of Economic Cooperation and Development, the BMZ, which is called the program Centers for Migration and Development. And we've been implementing this program in different cycles since 2017 in Nigeria. And during this progress, it's been an immense pleasure and honor to meet so many of you in the course of our work. Of course, also the FES, the CSOnetMADE, they're here as important partners in this event, and that's not as a matter, it's a result of years of collaboration. And over the last years, we've been working together to support national structures in terms of delivering services to the population, so that they can make better informed choices about the opportunities in terms of employment and migration, both in the region and beyond, as well as, of course, employment opportunities here in Nigeria. In a world, in a country where the words japa and japada are, part of the daily, it's what you wake up with and what you go to sleep with. It's on the minds and in the hearts of everybody. Everybody has relatives, friends, lovers that are thinking of going or coming. So this is very much deciding to talk about this topic here today. Is also not a coincidence. It's very much at the heart of the discussion and of I think in the interests of young people. So, we just sang the national anthem, and the last one of the last lines of the anthem is that that no man shall be oppressed, that we should fight for that. And I always think it's a very beautiful intro into our activities, because ultimately that's what we're working for all together, to ensure that there's no exploitation, no oppression. And working with the union in that context is, of course, very, very important, because we know that some of the main driving motivation for people to look for so-called greener pastures is not always necessarily the total absence of employment, but it's also, of course, about working conditions, about access to public services, and about security, the right, the rule of law, and all of those things. And the union has a major role to play in addressing those issues. So we're not just talking about migration and employment and labor migration as a separate topic. We're looking at it as part of a broader approach in terms of defending human rights and ensuring that people have access to better livelihoods and ultimately a better life. So that's why we're here, to talk about what the realities are, what we can do about it, and of course to be here to answer your questions, as well as, of course, give visibility to the work that is already being done. I mentioned that we've been implementing this program since 2017, and so much progress has been made. Both the NLC, the Federal Ministry of Labor, civil society have made huge efforts in order to create more visibility, be more, provide information to young people. And this webinar, this workshop is very much a part and parcel of that. We're organizing these webinars on a monthly basis, and we hope that if it's the first time that you're joining us, you'll be here every step of the way. So before we go into the rest of the program, I want to give the floor to Martha John to also welcome you on behalf of Young Workers of Nigeria. Thank you.
Good morning, young workers.
Good morning.
If I say young workers, you say future of the trade union. Young workers. Young workers. Are you sure that you are the future of the trade union?
Yes.
Thank you. So I want to first and foremost appreciate the organizers of this program, which is the GIZ, for collaborating with the Nigerian-German Congress to see to the success of this program. As we all know, youth are considered one of the vulnerable in the society. So we ought to fight for our rights. And also, when fighting for our rights, if we have backup and support, definitely we will succeed. So we appreciate your effort for organizing this program, and I hope that at the end of the day, our purpose of being here will be achieved. We will contribute in all aspects to see that migrants' rights also will be recognized in our workplaces. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Martha. All right, Wale, over back to you.
Thank you, Sandra. Thank you, Martha, for the welcome addresses. I will also, moving forward, I would like to invite Comrade Silva from the Nigerian-German Congress, who is the Acting General Secretary for the Solidarity speech. Comrade Silva, please let us welcome the Nigerian Congress.
You can see I'm dressed like a youth today. I am the youth at heart. Even if you think I'm not a youth in the words. But try me for our size if you think I'm not a youth in the words. Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Are you happy to be here? Yes. Are you sure? Yes. Wave your hand if you are. Do you believe in yourself?
Yes.
Do you believe in this country?
Yes.
You believe in this environment?
Yes.
Then you must learn to fight. Good. Let me start my opening remarks by recognizing in no particular order Sister Sandra, my brother from another mother here, Dr. Sandra, Sister Remy, the princess, and troublemaker. She thinks I'm the troublemaker in the system. My brothers, Bello and Emeka, Comrade James, other comrades from the Congress, and then my friends from the unignorable constituency, the fourth estate of the realm, without whom we cannot hear one another. I'm delighted to be asked to make some brief remarks this morning. We are aware that the theme of today's engagement is Youth on the Move, securing migrant workers' rights in ECOWAS and beyond. How many of you have had the opportunity of traveling outside Nigeria? If you have, quite a few of you. Now let me tell you, when you travel outside Nigeria, particularly in Europe and the United States, you are treated like a suspect. Do you understand? You are treated like a suspect. And you need to muster all the dignity in you to be able to fight back. Me, I've had cause to fight. If I name the number of countries I have fought, tickle, you won't believe it. I've had cause to fight. There was a time I seized one idiot physically like this. I worked in gas for breath until he was rescued. That was in defense of my nationality, my dignity as a human being, first and foremost. But in any case, let me start by going straight to the text of the book. I wish to appreciate GIZ. Is it GIZ or GIZ? GIZ. I'll give it Nigerian pronunciation. GIZ.
That sounds suspicious.
I wish to appreciate GIZ for collaborating with the Nigerian Labour Congress on the International Youth Day, commemorated every 12th of August, which celebrates young people's contributions to society while highlighting issues affecting them globally. The theme, Youth on the Move, securing migrant workers' rights in ECOWAS and beyond, is quite apt and timely given the rising surge in migration, particularly irregular migration. In today's world, migration, especially youth migration, with attendant socio-political and economic landscape surrounding it, is increasingly marked by rising hostility toward migrant workers, especially from developing countries. Discrimination, precarious employment conditions, exploitation, and limited access to legal protections characterize the experiences of many migrant workers. To curb the tide, ECOWAS has developed relevant instruments to promote free movement and migration. The ECOWAS Free Movement Protocol guarantees rights to mobility, residence, and establishment. However, more needs to be done to raise awareness and implementation of the protocol as it remains weak especially among youths. If you think I'm lying, just cross a border to Aflao or somewhere there, they begin to profile you. Yet it's within your right to move freely, okay? As a member of the ECOWAS community, free and unfettered access. Yet they start to profile you from that place. We should not be so, okay? And they will do it to you more than they will do it to you. You know the reason why? You know the reason why? Because you're young. That is your crime. Nigeria, with its large youth population, must ensure young people, whether potential migrants or returnees, are equipped with knowledge, tools, and platforms to advocate for migrant rights. The NLC continues to carry out activities and collaborate with stakeholders to strengthen the capacity of its affiliates and the young people to undertake migrant rights advocacy. You see, the value we attach to our citizens here at home will resonate with the value to which these citizens are attached when they go out. Do you understand? So your advocacy must start from here. That let government, let the system create value around you, around us. No one has any right to see you and drag you out of a car or an Uber or boat and say, let me look at your phone. Let me look at your tablet. Why would the police treat you as a suspect in your own country? Nobody has that right. So that value must be created around you, but you must demand for it. Do you understand? You must demand for it. So when they stop you and say, hey, bring this, you say, what for? Are you the owner? You bring your own. You got to learn to fight back. So the moment you acquire value from home, that value automatically will go out. Let me tell you this. Once value is attached to you, nobody will treat you shabby. Do you understand? Nobody will treat you shabby. And always take note of this. They may take everything from you, but don't let anybody take away from you your sense of self-esteem, your sense of self-worth. Let nobody, no matter what it will cost you, defend that. So, as we use this forum to raise awareness among young Nigerians on migrant workers' rights and regional protection mechanisms, we should also highlight the challenges faced by young migrant workers, especially from developing nations in hostile foreign environments. Okay? This is key. And you may not understand the importance of this line until when you get stranded in quote outside your country. Okay? Pray it never happens to you. The promotion of youth engagement in advocacy and policy dialogue related to migration and labor rights is a critical way to protect migrant workers' rights. Facilitating cross-sector collaboration among government, civil society, and international actors to amplify youth voices in migration governance as we are doing now with GIZ, is a novel initiative that we must sustain. I wish you all a wonderful engagement with meaningful resolutions that will further drive our advocacy. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Government, for the solidarity message. I will say that one important to appreciate the LSC on, especially regarding the planning of this event, is the leadership support that we got while planning this event. And it shows how interested the Labour Center is also the Congress is about issues of migration and when it comes to the rights of vulnerable people in general. There's this saying that you can measure the level of liberty in many places when you look at the liberties that are attached to vulnerable people, to women, to young people in general. So how those people are treated, how vulnerable people are treated, determine the level of liberty in that way. So I will appreciate the commitment once again. Thank you, comrade. Moving forward, in a short while, we're going to welcome the keynote address from Dr. Emeka Obiazu. Dr. Emeka Obiazu is the National Coordinator of the Civil Society Network of Migration and Development, CSOnetMADE. And that organization has been in the front line of advocacy for migrants' rights, for returned integration and allied interest. So I believe especially that it's rightly positioned to give us an insightful contribution on this topic. So I will employ us to join me in applauding and inviting to the podium Dr. Emeka Obiazu from CSOnetMADE for his keynote address. For the purpose of this event, everyone is in comrade. Comrade, you are welcome.
Good morning, everyone. Yeah, standing on the existing protocol. Today actually is more of a conversation day, so it's not a lecture by any means. For some this month, this is called a keynote address. It's not a keynote address. So I've done this for lighting some things that will form our conversation, especially when the panel will come over. So we'll be looking at an overview of the conditions, especially that concerns the rights of migrant workers within ECOWAS and beyond. So what we'll be trying to see is, one, who is a migrant, what it is to be a migrant and a worker, what could be the rights of migrants, how could these rights be abused, how would we know that, what should we do, and then I think my emphasis would also be on what is being done from the point of view of NLC, what the NLC has been doing in the recent past, especially within Nigeria, to ensure that the rights of migrants are protected. So, I saw that before. So, one of the major questions we ask as we begin is, why is it important for us to look at this topic, especially as we celebrate the International Youth Day, the collaborative activity of GIZ-ZME department and the NRC. We know that within ECOWAS, first and foremost, I think I should have done one primary question so that we will set this context well. Do we all know who a migrant is? Do we all know who we refer to as a migrant? I'm actually asking a question. Huh? So who is a migrant? Can anyone tell us? Anybody that I don't know his or her face, which means anybody that not see the circle of migration conversation. The young workers, can anybody here tell us who, or you have to understand it? You don't have to go to any dictionary or any etymological definition. Just who you know a migrant is.
Sorry. Migrant is one that can move from one country.
Okay, someone that moves from one country to another. Are you agreeing with me?
Thank you very much. I believe that a migrant is someone who has left his or her country of origin to another country for the purpose of work. Thank you.
Okay, you are now joining two groups. I was asking a generic question of migrant, but I've also added a migrant worker for purposes of work, isn't it? When Sandra was making her speech, she said, if you live in a country where Jamba and Jabada is what is well up with and what to go to bed with, then you must know that it is important to converse around this. So the concept of Jamba and Jabada situates Nigerian understanding of migration and description of who is a migrant. And so I don't want to go beyond what you just said. For us to put it in perspective, a migrant is one who leaves his or her place of original abode and crosses a border which is established, whether it is within or without, and then resettles in that place. That is, takes up a new residence in that place, and it's for any reason at all. And then in the context of why we are here, we are talking about migrant workers. So that person who moves on the account of work. What is interesting in the definition of a migrant worker is that it is not just somebody who has a job employment already. According to the ILO definition, it's broader than you having job already. But the purpose of that movement is job. That is, I decided to work. I have work. I have promised to work. And the person I'm traveling with is also working. So that makes it fluid for us to be able to contain the dynamics that involves migrant worker. And at each stage of this conversation, rights are protected, rights are denied, rights are abused. And that is why it is also important to do that. Living within West Africa, and as a country that is headquarters of West Africa, the most populous country in West Africa, Nigeria stands as a very significant place to talk about migrant workers living here. In the demography of migration in Africa in general, it is said that our movement happens within our continent. And in West Africa, it happens more. Most West Africans move across West Africa. And the reason why we do this is because the unity that is formed at the establishment of the Economic Community of West African States in 1975 provides for regional integration. And to enforce that regional integration in 1979, it established the protocol for free movement and free residence, and then also for doing business. So because we have this enablement within ECOWAS, it facilitates movement of people within ECOWAS. And then, of course, we share borders. Sometimes borders divide communities. So it makes it even more dynamic that if you go to Sydney, there are some parts that are Nigerians, some other parts are Beninese, Benin. And then if you go there, of course they speak Yoruba, they are common dialects. Then if you go towards Kwara, you also see the same community being divided. You go even as long as we are bordered by other countries. That is how we are also divided around communities, just by the demarcation that border puts in place. So, because of this particular thing that we have in our West Africa, it becomes important that movement flows within us. And as I just cited the example of the Protocol of 1979, which ECOWAS takes pride in as being one of the first countries before Schengen, people came together to talk about the Schengen visa and all those. West Africa is the first continent, sub-region that provided inter-regional free movement. Any other person copied from us. And then We are proud to say that, but sometimes what we are suffering with is that most of the things we say are on paper. The comrade who was speaking here said, why would it be that in your own country somebody will ask you, open your laptop, open your phone, let me see what it is. That is within your own country. How much more an ECOWAS person who crosses into another place? They use Afalao. Afalao is the border between Togo and Ghana. If you cross Afalao, you will see the huge movement. Many of that coming from Nigeria, Lagos axis towards Ghana. But if you see the line up of queue of cars that are crossing in the border of a place where there's supposed to be free movement, then you begin to ask yourself, what is free about this movement in this angle? You know, one strategic ECOWAS staff, a very high professional, high-level professional of ECOWAS. In short, he is director of ECOWAS common car insurance, and he is the one directing it. And he was just crossing from Lagos to Benin, and between Benin and Lagos, he was stopped by an officer at the border, demanding that he cannot cross with his car, because that car was carrying the Nigerian plate number, and they are saying he didn't pay the insurance that allows you to cross to Benin. But this guy said, I don't know if you know, recently there was a time Nigerian, the vehicle, what they call GIZ, this one that gives license. Oh, yeah. Vehicle license. Yes. The vehicle license one, not those VIO. Yes. There was a recent publication that they are going to provide a very coordinated vehicle license and insurance, so that if you buy a car insurance in Nigeria, it covers you with West Africa. You know, it is already in existence. The ECOWAS has it, but Nigeria is trying to integrate that so that it becomes one license, one insurance. But this young man, who is the director of this particular team, was caught up at the border and was refused. He kept calling, talking up to, and then they didn't allow him to move until he had to call somebody from Benin who works in ECOWAS, who knows who is the person in charge of that border. So you have to know somebody to be able to make your company free in a place where you have a free movement. So this is kind of things we are talking about, and why it is important. Why it is important also is that out of the 80% of the migration within West Africa, 90% actually is our migration movement. But we say that out of this 90%, over 70% of that movement happen among young people who are moving on the account of work or studies. And of course, the level takes more of that. And for those who work in high places, you know, they call that, the ones we call blue-collar jobs, sometimes it's easier to have your rights protected because nobody wants to be dragged to the courts. But we find out that most work movement within West Africa happens more within the, what we call the informal sector jobs. Those who are artisans, those who work in agricultural farms, those who do your tiling, from everything we can do. These are those people who have their rights more vulnerable, who are more vulnerable to rights abuse as the case may be. So this is one of the reasons why we talk about, why we think it is important to do this. 2 years ago, is it not 2 years now, James, when you did your studies? 2 years ago, NLC in Nigeria conducted a baseline survey on the working condition of migrant workers in Nigeria. And again, from the findings of that survey, the high number of workers who move and work in Nigeria are again from West African region. And we find in the demographic distribution that percentage is high also among the youths, particularly the gender dynamics of it is also very important. And this is one of the reasons why I think it is important to also highlight the issue of migrant workers within our space. So I have talked about what ECOWAS has done in establishing the protocol for free movement as the case may be. Now, for the case of understanding, the free movement that ECOWAS provides us under the 1979 protocol is that any citizen of the 15 countries, have we seen 15? 15 countries until what the Sahel people decide. Yes. So anyhow, the dynamics is very interesting because currently CSOnetMADE is working with FES, Frederick Ebert Chieftain of Ethiopia, the African Migration Policy Center, and we conducted a study on the implication of this movement of Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger from our withdrawal from West Africa Union, what is happening in migration corridor. And one interesting thing we found out is that ECOWAS is still playing the big brother. They are not forcing it, but the three countries are enforcing it. So it is easier to cross from their own country to ECOWAS region than to cross within their own region, because they are suspicious of anybody who comes through that axis. But as we said, for a mobile community like West Africa, it is a huge problem, because every little crack we have in our policy and in their enforcement, it is always exploited and abused by those who enforce those laws. So one of the things we have also found out is that the risk and the vulnerability of migrants have increased, not just within those countries, but around bordering West African countries around there. So the ECOWAS free movement says that you are free to enter into any ECOWAS country and stay there for 90 days. Take residence there for 90 days and take job there for 90 days. You are free. That is what it says you are free to do. Last month, a nephew of mine was moving to Sierra Leone, and they were just saying, all I need now is transport. I said, how do you just need transport? He said, because they say if I have my passport, I will just go. I said, yes, I know you will just go, but you're not just going. He said, you want to go, I sent you there. He said, yes, the person who is taking me said, all I need is passport. Then when they reach at the airport, they will squeeze something into somebody's hand. You squeeze something into somebody's hand and you move. I said, I may not even have problem with you squeezing something into somebody's hand. That is if they don't hold their hand when you squeeze it. But what happens is, when you cross in and then take that residence and begin to do your work, I said yes, for 90 days, you can live in that country and then do your business. But just know that after 90 days, you are now at risk. You are an irregular migrant. And as soon as the law catches up on you, you will be bundled. And when you are bundled, we don't know where they will drop you. So it is better and important that you take that step immediately. So what we are talking in essence is that when we talk about human rights of migrants, we also talk about translating what is on paper into practical reality. And this is why, like the comrade said, if you believe here, if you believe in Nigeria, if you believe in this place, then you have to get up and fight. In other words, you have to know who you are, what you want, and then stand up for it. This is what this is all about. Now, ECOWAS has also leaned towards what African Union is doing in general to ensure that protection of migrants is also done. In 2018, the African Union adopted what we call the African Treaty for Free Movement Protocols on free movement as well as business or trade they put across that. In August 1st, actually, that was adopted by the AU, and it used to be what was earlier called Abuja Treaty, because it started as far back as early 70s, talking about African free movement, building on what ECOWAS has done, but it was only in 2018 that it was now adopted as an African protocol, but unfortunately, that has not been enforced, because out of the 54 member countries of Africa, we have not received up to 15 countries that ratified that same protocol, including where we are staying right now. Have not done that. So the issue is that we cannot still move freely within Africa, and it is a very important and very disturbing reality. Very important and very disturbing. But many a times when we as Africans talk about migration, we always see the other people as against us. And the other people we are talking about is Europe and not America. But we don't remember us. I think it is even easier to move into Europe and not America than to move into some of African countries. Last year, there were some of our comrades here who attended the GCM review that was hosted in Addis, right? Some of us who didn't attend could not have our peace because they kept calling us every day. Where is the visa? We cannot get visa. We are not stranded. Can you help us to do this? We have to get people living in the US to help us facilitate to get visa for Africans who are living in Nigeria and Kenya and Uganda to go to Addis. And so the question is, why is it so? Right? Why is it so? In 2022, I was part of the Nigerian delegation to Kenya, an African Union and European Union event. And the ambassador from the Foreign Affairs called the ambassador of Kenya, of Ethiopia here, to say, how do we come? He said, no problem, don't mind, ambassador, since you guys are on national assignment, so the national protocol covers you, so you don't need anything to go there. And that is how we bundled ourselves to go to Addis. I was using my national passport. The ambassador and some other person were using their diplomatic passport. So we got to the airport in Addis. We got a VIP treatment. Car came to the foot of the craft and took us in. I was enjoying it for the first time in my life that such a VIP treatment was done. So they took us to a VIP lounge. As we were sitting there, they collected our passports to go and stamp us in. And then I noticed that the movement changed. After a while, they did like this. So ambassador said me, no. The other person said no. They say you go. And I went. I left the comfort place. I went to a smaller room. And then they asked me, can I see that your passport? Is there any other passport you have? I said no. And I don't think I wrote something that I have another passport. He said, oh, okay. But this passport will not pass. I said, that is Nigerian passport. He said, yes. With this passport, you cannot pass through here. And you don't have visa. I said, no, but ambassador called. He said, sorry, sir. I'm saying you cannot pass. And then I went in and called the ambassador. I said, okay, I said, this man said, I'm going to join you now. He said, no. He called the ambassador back. Ambassador said, put me on with this person. After the whole talk, from 5 p.m. in the evening until 11 p.m., I was still at the airport. And at the end of it all, I slept at the airport. They have to carry the other persons to go. And the reason is that I don't have visa. And I needed to get a visa in Nigeria before coming. And why was this so? The ambassador in Ethiopian ambassador in Nigeria did not know that that same day we left Nigeria for Addis, that their policy in Addis changed.
that same day that they cancelled visa on arrival, and then those privileges they give to those coming on a national assignment, that they cancelled it. And so I have to sleep at that airport. It took the EU ambassador, the EU delegate to Addis, the convener of Rabat process and the Khartoum process that were holding that event. It took all of them and the Nigerian ambassador to go to the Ministry of Interior, not even their foreign affairs, the Ministry of Interior, to get him himself come to the airport. And the guy talking to me at the airport was one kind person that if I look at him, I say, this guy man. Right? I was like that. Because and that man listened to nobody until that his boss came and said, and not just say stand, gave him a letter, said this is the letter from the ministry, please allow him to go in. And on the condition that the Nigerian ambassador will bring me back. He will bring me back in his hand to the airport as I'm leaving on the day I said I was leaving. This is Africa I'm talking about. So these are the kind of things, and the danger in it is that if you do not take time, you think you have everything right, but on just a switch of a thought, you are already on the other side of the story. And then you may not be able to be lucky to get all this lineup of officials to come and support you. The next thing you see yourself is either in detention camp or those places we see on social media where they say Nigerians are languishing. So while we were talking about this, we want to ensure that everybody who is a migrant, especially those who seek work, must necessarily be protected as they move. There are also, within the global space, a series of rights that everybody is entitled to have. Oftentimes, we say what migrants' rights. There is no right that is called migrants' rights. There is no right that is a migrant's right. What we have is the human rights. So the only thing we talk when we talk about migrants' right is to ensure that migrants enjoy their human rights irrespective of their migratory status. That is what we refer to as migrants' rights. So they don't give you privilege that you are a migrant or create a special right for you. The only thing we are talking is that if they say there is no discrimination in employment, it must apply to you. If they say that there's no child labor, it must apply to you as a migrant. If they say that you can travel with your family to go and do job, it must apply to you as a migrant. These are the count of the things we talk about. But we know that because of the condition or because of the status of people as migrants, that is why most of these rights are being denied. Especially when you are on irregular status. That is when you don't have the right documents, when you have overstayed your visa, when you have moved from one policy protecting you to another policy, and then you find into trouble. You know, these days we can stay in the comfort of our room and work for a company in the Bahamas or a company in the US or any place at all, and then you think because you're working with them, you don't say I am an employee of this person. One day you now carry your passport and go to embassy and go to airport, say that I'm employed by this person, and then you want to cross. Then they will tell you that virtual life is different from physical life. So you can make all the money virtually, but you cannot cross to go and get it. Are you together on that? And let me just use one little example. If you are doing an online course, for instance, if you are registered with Walden University in California, and they award you a PhD, one of the things they ask you is you don't need to get a student visa. They only ask you, do you have a visa to visit the US? Just in case you have to come for your graduation. So in that case, you can use your visa and the VS visa to be able to do that. But if you don't have that, then you also run into trouble. So it is important we know all this. So, how and at what point would your rights be violated, or what rights do we need? We ask, when we talk about rights of migrant workers, first we said that a migrant worker should have a right of entry into a place to go seek for work. And so, the right to enter a place simply means that if I obtain the necessary documents as required and follow the process as required, I should be able to enter that place. I should also, if I get a job, I should be fairly treated like every other person is being treated at work. Again, I should have a freedom of association as a worker, just like we are talking within the umbrella of NLC. We should have what we call fair recruitment. Fair recruitment is that I should be, my dignity should be protected when I be recruited. The conditions of my service must be made known to me before I sign in. And one of the conditions of fair recruitment is that nobody should collect recruitment fee from me. In other words, the recruitment agency who will not tell you come and apply and all those things should not take any money from you, because the recruitment cost is being borne by the employer for whom the recruiter is recruiting you. But if you don't know all this, it may fall into the problem of being exploited, even when you are still here. I remember sometime we did this program with, what's the name for Libya. This is those who employ and recruit. So we are doing a program for them, and then we talked about this. Somebody in the group that they said, see, I don't tell us whether they will collect money or not. The thing that we want to leave this country, let them collect the money, but when they let us get the visa. So if we will tell ILO and the UN to remove that clause, but tell these people that as long as we pay, let them give us the visa that we can go with it. But what it tells is that the person who is recruiting you is actually defrauding you, because he got the same money from the employer. The employer had paid him everything that he is asking you to bring. So, and because you are vulnerable, he also takes that from you. Then we talk about access to justice. If that for any reason you are not treated well, you should be able to seek redress of that issue in an established court. But of course, safety at work is very important. I don't know any of you here who knew when we experienced COVID. Did you remember COVID? Yes. You were, okay, I was going to ask whether we were born during that time. So, during COVID, you remember one of the first, the one that hit everybody, what was the lockdown? And what was lockdown? No movement, stay at home, no work. So, the thing that nobody should go to any workplace, right? And factories and firms were asked to release their workers to go back. But at that period, my network did a program, and it was called Migrants at Us Protection. And so we did a survey on the protection of migrant workers at that point. We discovered, that was when Dangote's refinery was being built in Lagos, right? We discovered that the Indians who were contractors working in that place had also employed some migrants and locked them up inside that refinery. At that period when everybody was expected to be away, and they were still working there. There's another Chinese rice farm in Kano that also locked up workers in that same place, engaging them to work without any of this personal protective equipment that was even a condition for you to do anything. So So all these are what we call the workplace safety protection that must be encouraged, must be enforced for all migrants. Of course, we cannot talk about low wage. We know what they call payment under the table. I don't know if you know that language. Payment under the table is if you cross to another country on irregular status, and the minimum wage of that country is $10. Because you don't have a paper, your employer will ask you, do you want to work or do you want to die? So you choose one of them. Do you want to work or do you want to die? Of course, we want to work. And so it tells you, I will be paying you $4.50. While you know the payment is $10. And so the agreement is that don't ask me for the payment voucher. The thing is that when every other person is being paid, you pretend you didn't see them. At the end of the payment, you come to his office, he puts it in an envelope, and it must be cash, because no bank tracing to know that this transaction goes on. And so we actually say, from the point of view of civil society and human rights protection, we actually say that the irregular migration, especially the corridor of work, survives because of these employers who are exploiting the condition of irregularity to get cheap labor and then expose the migrants to that kind of disastrous and inhuman conditions. So, it is important, therefore, and then why this event is great is that one of the key elements that help us to fight this is awareness and sensitization. For you to know, right? For you to know. If you know, then you know. And now you know what happens. Every other thing is on your own, because you cannot say you do not know. But I have heard Nigerians saying, yes, I will have known, leave us. It is better to die struggling than to die here doing nothing. So that is what it is we talk about. My system is not open again. So, I've brought you examples from on the ground, what needs to be done for us to be able to situate this problem. And what I also want to highlight is the efforts the NLC has done in recent time to ensure that migrants are protected before they depart, when they get engaged, and if they want to return. Before they depart, NLC worked in collaboration with IGZ Africa to develop the Migrant Recruitment Advisory. It is an online space where you can look at that country you want to go to, look at what we call the legitimate recruitment agencies, jobs that are legitimate jobs, conditions that you need to fulfill, and what you should avoid. So it helps you before you apply for work to know what you need to work. And then it connects you to the Migrant Resource Center here in Nigeria. It gives you the information of all the Migrant Resource Centers and other available services you can get to get those valuable information. And also, as I have cited the issue of the study they did to underscore the condition of migrant workers here, and upon that they developed an advocacy tool to enable protection of migrant workers. And the last thing they did in that regard is for those who return. NLC also developed an information toolkit to let people know how they could access dignified return and sustainable reintegration. But having done all this, we feel that it is not yet enough, because even as of 2023, when that work is completed, the recent survey also revealed more exploitation of migrant workers, beginning on the 4 circles. Migration has 4 circles: pre-departure, departure, settlement, and return. In all these 4 legs of the circle, migrants still become exploited and their vulnerability increases by the day. And
and among the victims, the youth remains the highest number of those who are being victimized on the account of labor. So I believe that when the panelists come on board and answer direct questions and engage in real issues that concern you as a country persons, to be able to engage on direct aspects of the conversation that have gathered us here this morning. And of course, we will provide more insight in case we have something to offer. Thank you.
Thank you, Doctor, for that insightful keynote address. I think we all benefited from the knowledge he has given us. Am I correct to say that?
Yes.
Thank you. So moving forward, maybe I just capture what I'm saying. I will just take a point for myself. You know, and maybe in one sentence we will say the rights are there. They are there on paper. But what is now important is implementation, collective action to make that happen. And we know our role as young workers, as the people driving the unions, to ensure that these collective actions happen in terms of strategy, in terms of tactics and activity to implement. So I know that we have comments, questions. We will open the floor for them very shortly. Maybe next 10 minutes to have questions from the audience. And we also have audience online too, who are participating in this event. I also want to particularly recognize members of the Young Workers Network of the Federal Stiftung and also of the Nigerian-German Congress, who are joining us mostly online. We appreciate you for joining us. I think it must be how do you rectify documentation from being maybe somebody who entered an ECOWAS country under the Free Flow Protocol and then become regularized to become a regular migrant instead of an irregular migrant. So you are asking what the processes are. I don't know if anyone wants to take that up.
Let me answer that question on behalf of Dr. Emeka Obiazu. Within the framework of the ECOWAS Free Movement Protocol, you are expected as an ECOWAS citizen to move from one country to the other and stay in that country for 90 days. Usually, that is a rule, but people doesn't normally follow that rule. What people do is that by the time they enter and they have spent 90 days, they come back to their own country again and they enter. Now, another thing again is that most ECOWAS country doesn't follow up. Once you have the green passport, your passport, ECOWAS passport, and you have entered an ECOWAS country, they will allow you. After that 90 days, the administrative setup in that country doesn't normally follow to check who has spent overstayed 90 days or not. And many people are working and living in an ECOWAS country without any regularization. In Nigeria today, if you look at the Belonis, the Ghanaians, those who are the Nigerians who normally do tiling artisans, majority of them have stayed in this country more than 6-7 years. It's also like that in other countries as well. But the issue there is that avoid anything that can take you to police station. Avoid crime. Because if you fall into that prey, by the time you go to police station, they will ask you, how many days have you stayed in this country? And if they tell that you have stayed over 90 days, they can deport you, they can tell you to go back to your country. But if you go back, you can see the enter. So this is what is happening. So there's no any particular law that says you have to regularize. But the law, I think the framework has three sides. The right of entry and stay and work, right of establishment, and then right of residency is there in the ECOWAS protocol. This is what I understand that is happening. I think maybe James will say something.
I also think it's important. Those are options that we are given.
But when you enter another country, there are also protocols. If you want to work permanently, if you want to stay permanently, you can also begin that process through the Ministry of Interior or whatever to seek official permission to become a resident, to become a worker. But all these smart moves are what people do. It's just 90 days, come back, go back, but you can also normalize it. Just that it takes time and a lot of paperwork can be done.
But I think one of the things we are doing as trade union is advocacy for regular pathways. And advocacy for regular pathways means documentation and regularization. And that you are an ECOWAS citizen, you must follow the proper way to become a regular migrant. Because the challenge of migration today is the rising irregular status of migrants. And that is why when you enter an ECOWAS country as an ECOWAS citizen, after 90 days, try to visit the national authority where you are supposed to properly register and be documented, so that your stay in that country will be legal and you have regular status, not to wait until you fall into trouble. And I know that the Nigerian government have done a number of things to ensure that there is regularization of non-Nigerian citizens in Nigeria. Not too long ago, about 2 or 3 months ago, the federal government came out with a policy calling on all non-Nigerians to go and visit the immigration office to properly be documented so that they can be regular migrants in Nigeria.
I think building on regular pathways, I think for information as well as practical resources, the GIZ has done a great number of activities and is still doing so in bringing to the awareness of the young people, especially migrant workers, the existence of these regular pathways for job purposes and education. How do they do this? That is what we call, they give you opportunities of how you could migrate regularly to countries like Germany. But in recent times, they have also focused on West Africa. What are the job opportunities in West Africa that you can actually apply for? Or when you get in there, they usually have 90 days free visa to be able to find, and then use that route to get yourself engaged in such job. We did one program with GIZ last year in November for those within our vouchers, and now we are extending that to other zones, going to do one for the south-south or southeast area and then northwest, and then we hope to continue in that way. The more we spread the news. And there are also many job centers, I think GIZ is also running around within Nigeria, that you could also stop over to hear all these things. Unfortunately, what we don't do is we don't start early to seek the right information. It is only when we are caught up, and then it might be too late for some people. They might want to maximize this opportunity of today to ask more questions and have to be linked to these available services. It is not like you will be journeying your 90 days and wait for 90 days to be over, then you start. The reality is that 1 second after 90 days, you are in irregular status. So if the law catches up with you at that moment, you are being treated as irregular migrants, right? Just like somebody who wants to graduate or who wants to move from one work to another, right? Those who look for a job, they don't resign before you look for another one. You have to be looking for a job where you are sure it's secure. You have asked necessary questions about that job, then you can now go ahead and resign where you are working. So the 90 days is a grace. So if you go in and within that 90 days, you want to stay, you use that period, like James said, identify the national office responsible for the regularization
which should be Immigration Ministry of Works and all those. And then you start that process. And so it flows that when you start that process, you'll be according to that. But the danger is waiting till the 90 days is over. Then it might become a bad situation.
Thank you, Dr. We should move forward. We have had contributions and some questions, but we still have like a platform and opportunity to ask further questions during the panel discussion. So I want to go straight to the panel discussion. We have experts and should I say advocates who will be leading us in that conversation. And shortly, some of them have been introduced, so I will not waste the time in introducing them comprehensively again. I would like to invite the program, our host for today, Sandra Vermuijten, and is the head of program of the Nigerian-German Center for Migration and Development. You're welcome. I would also like to follow it up by inviting Comrade Ismail, who is the Deputy General Secretary of the Nigerian-German. I will also like to invite Dr. Sandra. So Dr. Sandra is the head of the Migrant Resource Center in Emeka, which is under the Federal Ministry of Labor and Employment. So speaking of experts, I would also like to invite to join the platform Comrade Emeka, the program manager of the business. Also to join us is the man in charge of the migration desk. And speaking of technical topic now entirely, I would like to invite Mr. James to the stage. Please let us welcome him to the platform. Thank you. I would also like to invite myself to take my seat. So, good morning once again, audience, both online and in the hall. So, the essence of this panel discussion is to go deeply, dive deep into the topic. And this particular topic, is the shaping. The particular topic for today is migrant labor rights in the shaping civic space in youth perspective. So, it's a combination of three elements. We want to know what is a civic space, when does it start shrinking, and what are migrants' rights, or migrant workers' rights. How do you protect them? And how do you also view this from a young worker's perspective? And Dr. Emeka has laid the background for this conversation. I want to mention the keynote address. is that young people, especially women, are particularly vulnerable when it comes to work relations. So now when these young people are now migrant workers, it becomes particularly precarious. So what should be the role of the union in protecting securing the rights of these workers? How do we protect them? How do we ensure that there is proper communication of the rights that migrant workers should have under the law and under international agreement and treaties like the ECOWAS protocol? So I would like to start with Dr. Sandra. Like I said, Dr. Sandra is the head of the Migrant Resource Center. She's representing the government here. And our panel is like intentionally selected. We have persons who are representing international development, who have experience working on this topic of migration and of migrant workers especially. And we also have representatives of the union, not even represent leadership of the trade union, who are very central to the topic we are taking up today. And the civil society, that's the effect from community maker. So in a short while, we hear from Sandra, also who is, like I said, our host, and we also have like a past experience in the area of international development cooperation and how to ensure that policies and programs on issues of migration are also designed for the protection of migrant workers' rights. So going back to Dr. Sandra. This is more of a personal question. From your experience at the MRC, what are the most common labor rights violations that young migrants face?
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much. The Federal Ministry of Labour and Employment is responsible for promoting regular pathways of labour migration in Nigeria. And within the migration governance framework in Nigeria, the Ministry of Labour is the lead agency. And the ministry also, in collaboration with development partners and civil society organizations and other stakeholders, has formulated what we call the national policy on labour migration. And one of the objectives of that policy is the protection of the rights of migrant workers. Now, back to your question. The MRC was set up to promote regular pathways of labour migration through information dissemination to would-be migrants also and also to returning migrants as well. From my experience from the MRC, most of the right violation comes from the areas of employment contracts. For example, issues of termination of appointment, wrongful termination of appointment, issues of layoff did not follow contract of employment. So oftentimes people, young Nigerians or migrant workers come to the MRC to report that their job was wrongfully terminated or they were wrongfully laid off. And then the ministry will take it up by the employer to ensure that the provisions of the labor laws is being adhered to. For example, in a workshop, in a workplace where redundancy is declared, the law says, the labor law says, last in, first out. Last in, first out. That means that if you are the last person that joined that organization, whenever there is redundancy, you'll be the first person to be laid off, not somebody that has been there before you came. So sometimes the employer will not follow that rule. So when such complaint is lodged on the Ministry of Labour, we take it up with the employer to ensure that the procedures laid down in the labor policy, the labor laws are followed. And sometimes we always advocate that Employment contract must be signed because whatever is signed in the employment contract between the employer is binding. So sometimes the employer can, terminate the appointment of migrant workers with outside the content of the agreement that is signed. And in some cases, when they come, we ensure that justice is done in that case for that migrant workers. We have the proper salaries. We have been able to ensure that migrant workers are reinstated when they are lawfully, terminated. This is what we have noticed in migrant workers. Thank you.
Thank you, Doctor. Please, we should applaud him. Thank you. I think as a follow-up question now to Governor Bello, who is representing the leadership of the Nigerian-German Congress here. So, from a junior leadership perspective, how does the LSA see its role in protecting migrants' labor rights in Nigeria and ECOWAS?
Thank you, Wale. Thank you, GIZ, for this very important partnership. We are talking about young people. We are talking about the future of our organization and the future of our country. And first, about civic space is about the application of rule of law. It's about freedom. It's about the freedom of association and the freedom of speech, freedom of movement. Like Dr. Obiazu, I think, said, there are no specific rights to migrants. What is good for the worker in Nigeria is good for the worker who has come from Ghana to Nigeria. So if the condition of the worker in Nigeria is bad, you are not going to expect a miracle to the one that is coming from Ghana or that is coming from anywhere. So the first is to have a base which is a universal environment that allows people to have full expression. And the basic fundamental rights are there. The specific labor rights are also there, to fair pay, occupational health and safety, a right to have leave, to have all of those things. So first is to ensure that every worker has a fair and equal treatment. When I discuss matters like this, I like to give specific examples that shows the things that labor can do to improve the condition of people, whether they are local workers, whether they are migrant workers. First, you must build that organization to be able to fight, to understand the issues, and to be able to push for the right of people. I give the example of a Ghanaian worker in a steel factory in Lagos, very close to Christ Embassy. He lost his hand in an industrial accident. First, unfortunately, there is a union there. The union is weak. So he ran to Center for Democratic Workers' Rights. They assisted him, they pushed the management, he got some treatment. Then somewhere along the line, I was then secretary of NSA in Lagos State. So the matter was referred to me, and I took it up. We got him a prosthetic hand, and we got him at that time, that should around 2009, 2829, about 3 million naira compensation. He's a Ghanaian. In fact, at the end of the day, I think he reported to the embassy, and the embassy called me to thank me. I said, no, thank the Nigerian-German Congress. He is a worker, and the essence of labor is to fight for the right of working people. I'll give another example. Because when we talk of migrant workers, we're not just focusing on people who are paid employment. Because in reality, the majority of working people are in the formal sector. They are domestic workers. They are working in construction. They are working on their own. I used to be in the textile workers area. So we organized this group of self-employed people who made a party. The kind of material doctor was making, we organized them into the union. And guess what? There are Nigerians there, but there are also many Senegalese, Gambians, Guineans who are into that trade, who work around the area in Lagos, around the Ghana area. Now, when we try to organize this informal group, we discovered that quite a lot of foreigners are there, and that was what led me to Bello in Lagos. The woman who helped protest. Because as a union, we need to have the knowledge about where we can find opportunity to defend the right of our people. It's about understanding of the law, it's about understanding of the institutions, it's about understanding of the policy environment. So we knew that, and we said, no, because they suffer some kind of profiling and immigration, extorting money and all of that. So we were able to direct them there. And not just only that, if you're a worker, you are a worker. You have a right to belong to the union. And so they were not just union members, some of them were union experts. So it showed, I'm just demonstrating practically what trade unions can do to give effect to what we are saying. It's not an hypothetical question, they are real life questions. So wherever we find that, so first is the opportunity to organize all workers. And when you're talking about student space, that's where the challenge lies. Increasingly, employers are insisting organization of workers. Government is not providing the necessary support that we need to have to get workplaces organized. Because without organizing workplaces, the Nigerian will suffer, the migrant will suffer even more. So I think I was laying the basis and we thank you for that follow.
Thank you. I mean, that was comprehensive enough. I mean, following up, I will move to Common James beside me here. When Dr. Onasi was speaking, he mentioned that one of the major challenges facing migrant workers in terms of rights unjust labor on issues of employment contracts. But from your desk, what are the key issues, migration issues affecting Nigerian youth today from your own perspective as the one managing the migration desk of the Congress?
Thank you very much, Wally. A number of issues are confronting migrant workers and young workers in Nigeria today. Being shaping civic space. And what do we mean by shaping civic space? We are talking about space where there is increasing authoritarianism. We are talking about space where liberty is being restricted. We are talking about space where freedom of association is being restricted. And most of the issues there are issues around restriction of freedom of expression and assembly. For instance, in Nigeria youth today, the liberty to self-expression and assembly is being trampled upon. Youths are operating in the digital space, and we know that the state is also doing what we call digital censorship, where youths are being targeted for posting issues that have to do with their liberty of space. A very good example is the issue of the young NYSC member who came out to express her feelings deriving from the way that the blue coppers are feeling based on the meager allowances that they are earning. And as of today, that young lady is being denied her NYSC certificate. This is issues of youth around the civic space. We talk about limited access to information and resources. Education is dying, and how do you have an informed and a good labor force if you don't have quality, affordable, and accessible public education? These are issues that the youth are facing around the civic space. Not to talk of the increasing unemployment situation, where our universities, our higher institutions turns out hundreds of thousands of young graduates every year, and they are not having opportunity to be employed. And this is fueling irregular migration, because the crisis around migration is not about migration, it's about migration governance. And if job opportunities are limited at home, then the youths who have gone to acquire knowledge, who are exposed, must then be pushed to engage in irregular migration. And this is where we are strictly saying, when we are talking about migration governance in Nigeria, we must talk about employment creation. Not just about employment creation, we must talk about decent jobs. And that is where we are calling on the Nigerian government to ensure the ratification of ILO Convention 122, which talks about public employment creation that is quality and that is decent. These are issues. If we must address irregular migration that is prevalent among the youth, Nigerian government must be focused in terms of employment creation and respecting the human dignity of young Nigerians.
Thank you, comrade. Thank you for that. I think we can applaud this to accommodate our speakers. We are getting a lot from their wealth of experience here. I would like to move on to Mrs. Shelby Yudika, who herself is a trade unionist and has also been providing support in her capacity as a program manager with the FES to the trade union development. Ma'am, in your experience and in this line of work, what strategies have you identified that the unions and CSOs have used successfully to defend migrant workers?
Thank you. Good afternoon. And happy International Youth Day. We're still celebrating our God. Okay. Thank you, Wale, for the invitation today at this event. It's something that is commendable. The FES, we celebrated International Youth Day last week, Saturday. And we're also seeing unions doing the same thing. I think it's something to be celebrated, it's something commendable, and it's something that we should encourage. Now, how do what strategies do unions and CSOs use successfully to defend the rights of migrant workers? I think, like the key speaker said, the place to start is the place of awareness raising, so that these categories of workers would know their rights. And he gave a caveat that there are no migrant rights, there are human rights. Because whether you are a migrant or not, you have basic rights at work. The right to organize, the right to collectively bargain, to be involved in bargaining process, to be involved, to have a say in the determination of your wage, the right to a fair wage, the right to safety in the workplace, the right to social protection, and a couple of other rights, even the right against violence and gender-based violence. So these are some of the issue around awareness raising is one of the strategies that has been used to defend the rights of migrant workers. There is also the popularization and implementation of the ILO fair recruitment policy, standards. It's also one of the strategies that can help in the defense of migrant rights. And then Comrade Bello talks extensively about the trade unions' right to organize these categories of workers. Because if these categories of workers come under trade union protection, we're sure that yes, they would enjoy all the other basic rights, and also the issue around dignity of the human person would be respected. Also, you talk about the access to justice, exposing them, informing them about providing access to justice, especially in cases where there are violations, where there are discriminations, where there are injustice. And finally, I think another strategy is provision of counseling and information. It's important. Counseling, information to migrants to be able to navigate the complex process of migration. Because for us as citizens, we know the challenges around the workplace. Now, talk less of migrants it will be more complex. So if there are counseling opportunities, if there are informations provided, it will help in the cause of, in defending the rights of migrants in the workplace. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you, colleague, for that contribution. And I'll move on to comment Sandra Vermuijten herself. I did GIZ work because I also work there. I did GIZ work to develop the capacity of stakeholders in several ways. So my first question will be in this line. What role do international partners like GIZ play in amplifying youth voices in migration policy? As the youth as a stakeholder, how is GIZ amplifying their voices?
Thank you so much, and thank you so much for all of you being here. As you can tell, this is an interesting panel. I do think that we need to make sure that we keep it moving. So let's try to be concise, and that's exactly what I'm going to try to do. Obviously, our program is first and foremost really for young people. I mean, we've delivered over 400,000 individual services, 95% to people under 30 years old, right? So these programs are intentionally built to support young people and their quest for better information, better employment, and better chances at successful migration. And that's why we are here today, but also, of course, we always support the recognition of the importance of organized youth organizations in these processes, not what do you call it, Instagram opinion makers, people that have a lot of followers on YouTube. No, we consciously favor organized youth organizations that represent young people. I think that's a very, very important point that I want to underline, because that's really the way we can ensure that these processes are inclusive. It's not just about deciding what is good for youth, but also making sure that they're involved in these processes. So I think that, and in terms of how do we do that in practical terms? I mean, we have a lot of stakeholder processes, also with returnee networks. So those are governed by returning migrants themselves, which by and large are also very young, as well as, of course, a lot of the other people that we are working with, supporting youth-led organizations and their work in terms of advocating for workers and migrant rights. So yeah, I think that's.
Thank you, Sandra. Please a round of applause. Thank you. I will move to Bello and keeping the flow. But we also want to understand some of the issues that are faced in this. And this is also like an opportunity for more stakeholders working on this topic to sit from the perspective of each other. So, comrade, I would ask, what specific challenges do unions face when trying to defend migrant workers, especially?
Well, you know the way union work. Union work on the basis of information about workers. And where are these location of these workers, where they are in terms of organizing approach. So it's only when you have workers established into unions that then you begin to say, okay, this one is a non-Nigerian, this one is a migrant. if you don't have that information, many workers suffer in silence because union is not able to reach the largest of workplaces. So one challenge is the right to organize. It's becoming a big issue. The right to organize at all. That's one area of challenge. The other is also about the employers. Employer resistance to the union in terms of pushing for the right of workers to form union. So if this one is not specific to migrant workers. We are talking generally about what unions do and the opportunities that unions have to protect workers. The other is also about the Ministry of Labour and its role in ensuring that unions are supported in this effort. Because the law is there, just like the doctor said when he was speaking, on paper, these rights are there. The right to belong to the union, the right to freedom of association, the right to collective bargaining. But it only happens when workers are in the union. So if the union do not have opportunity to organize workplaces, then how do you extend the opportunity, the opportunity to even defend the right of working people? I think that's one key issue. The other issue is because we are talking about migration, as it appears to people who are coming, so it appears to Nigerians who are going. We look at the case of South Africa, xenophobia. What is the cause? Who are the victims of xenophobia? Very ordinary people, very ordinary workers. Particularly the army of migrants from Mozambique, from Nigeria, from West Africa, are the victims because they work largely in the informal sector. And because there is no education, there is no awareness, there is no public knowledge among the population about the need to cohabit peacefully. People see, and there's a high rate of unemployment in those communities. So people see the migrants as constituting an obstacle to their own well-being, to their own jobs that they will get. So there's a crisis. Now, what should be the role of the union in that situation? You expect unions to be able to stand on the basis of principle of equality of opportunity for everyone. But surprisingly, at that time, unions in South Africa were really edgy. You couldn't make the pronouncement. Why? Because they don't want to be seen to be standing politically wrong. Because there's a general here in that atmosphere to say, look, migrants are the problem of unemployment in our country. It happened here in Nigeria in 1980, during Shagari time, when there's already a general perception. So what I'm saying in other words, public perception could also hamper the work of the union, such that unions may not be able to even come out to articulate and canvass that no, the Ghanaian has a right as a worker the same way the Nigerian has a right. Because there's already a public perception that these people are disturbing opportunity for indigenous and national to have decent jobs. So I think that's also an important. So in terms of public awareness and campaign, it's not just going to be limited to workplaces. We also need to have an opportunity to read the public, to say that a worker is a worker, irrespective of the status, irrespective of the nationality, is entitled, he or she is entitled to the basic right to decent work, to fair wages, to occupational health and safety, to social protection. Whatever a Nigerian worker, or any worker for that matter, is entitled to, that person should be entitled to it. So there's important need for public communication, for public awareness around the right of migrants. There's also the need to reach confidence, migrants, and to boost their confidence that the union is capable of addressing the issues of migrants. So we need to also reach migrants wherever they are, particularly that most migrants are in the formal economy, they are in the formal sector. For migrants in the public, in paid employment, a bit easier to, for migrants in the formal economy. They're isolated, they're in remote areas, they don't want to come to the public there, so the union needs to go extra mile to ensure that they reach this category and they are able to also raise awareness, sensitize them, and ensure that they bring them into the union fold. There are already existing unions that people can fall into. We are in construction, there are people you can fall into. We are in the formal economy, we are a tailor, you are a kampala maker, there are categories you can fall into. You are a domestic worker. If there is an association of domestic workers, you have that opportunity of that linkage. So that it's not a case of creating a new association or a new union of migrant workers. It's to ensure that people feel into existing structure of protection. I think that's very important. And when it's difficult for the union to organize, it's difficult to expand the opportunity to cover everyone.
Thank you, comrade. Please let us have this week. I agree completely that we have to mainstream the issue of migrant workers and place it within the existing structures and framework of the union. I want to move to comrade Bello and ask, how can youth-led organization give more influence in labor rights advocacy? And the reason why I'm asking that question is I know you are leading the effort presently to develop the next generation of young workers activists within the Federal Labor program. So in your view, how can youth-led organization give more influence in labor rights advocacy or within the labor movement to drive some of those advocacy?
Thank you. I think the most important thing is that the organization, whether it's youth-led or adult-led, must be credible. Credible, independent, accountable, and participatory. And I like the comment by Sister Sandra saying that you work with organizations, not influencers, not people who are followers. Because it's important. If our organizations are not credible, they are not accountable, we're going nowhere. The project is not going to succeed. Another thing is that we live in a world where knowledge is the new currency. So youth organizations must be driven by knowledge. Knowledge as to what are the topical issues, what are the issues that affect young people, and then how do we participate in the policy space. It's important. And then also building of networks, because you can't do life alone. It's not possible. That's not how you are made as humans. You cannot do life alone. You need to build network. You need to work in alliances. And I want to share the experience of the FES Young Workers Training. We have a training where we are building, like what they said, a layer of leadership, union leadership. But when we started the project 8 years ago, we felt that no, we shouldn't just limit it to trade unions. We should bring in civil society activists. And it has helped to shaping to make the participants in that project very strong, informed, and conscientized. Because the people from the civil society come with a different orientation. And they are able to also navigate and better understand how trade unions work. And then also it's important as youth-led organization to raise public awareness on issues that affect young workers. We need to raise awareness. We need to correct negative narratives. Because the narratives in public parlance is that young people are not serious. They are not serious, they are lazy, which is not true. In the last 7 years that I've coordinated this project, I've met young people who are agile, innovative, resilient, and knowledgeable. And I've been able to use the energy they bring to the table. Young people bring energy, they bring ideas to the table. Sometimes when I talk to them, I push back, I listen to them more. because I'm listening to new ideas. They have a can-do spirit. There's a project we're doing with the young people. It's on the internet, and our colleagues from Africa are asking, what is this you are doing? We're doing a podcast, and they bring all kinds of people to interview, and we see the response. We see the acceptance of the project, because people are eager to receive information. And so organizations led by young people should be ready themselves to come forward. You should not accept you should not accept negative narrative around young people. You should not live to the narrative. You should stand above the narrative. And you should also find a space in the public space, in policy space. And so somebody says, if they don't invite you to the table, if they don't invite you, bring your chair, so that you participate and you raise your issues. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you for important word. I will move to, as a follow-up, to conversation. I know the ZME program works so much with the capacity of stakeholders, especially partners from the ministry and the trade unions. So, what ways can partnership with labor unions strengthen migrant labor rights protection, migrant labor rights protection? I know that there will be a lot of emphasis on the point that migrant workers are also workers, or migrant workers' rights is also the same thing as workers' rights. But we find ourselves in a human society where there's always the need for definition. Migrant workers face peculiar problems than workers in general. So that's also necessitates the reason for a special interest in facing the issue of migrant workers' rights. So what was in terms of programming or partnership, what does GIZ do to strengthen migrants' labor rights protection?
Okay, thank you so much, Wally. Well, maybe just to say, I'm from Belgium, and in Belgium there's a unionization degree of 55%. That means that more than 50% of workers are members of unions, right? And about 15% of workers are of foreign origin. So we have about 1.5 million people now, with a population of 11 million that are of foreign origin. So, I mean, I know it sounds very small. I mean, that's just a bit bigger than the FCT, but, but nevertheless, as a point of reference. Even though a large group of migrants came into the country in the 50s and 60s, the majority of the trade union leadership was 100% Belgian. And so it took a long time for the union to start both including migrant workers and also recognizing including migrant workers in their leadership. I mean, it's a process, and I think that international development cooperation also builds on this experience. I mean, making union movements more inclusive makes sure that migrant workers' rights can be better protected. So that's why this is also very much part of our program. Besides, of course, the recognition that it's not just about knowing your rights, it's also about improving working conditions. And for the Nigerian government to be able to advocate for better protection of Nigerians abroad, it's also about being able to show that the Nigerian government and trade unions also take care of migrant workers here, because it's all about, this is the real quid pro quo, you know, that we are talking about. The same thing as, you know, how people that need to get visa, you know, if your own country makes it very difficult for people to get visa, then you can expect that the other side is going to start doing the same thing. So I think the recognition that we're in all of this together, and we should work in partnership, recognizing the role of trade unions. I think in international cooperation for a long time. There was a very strong focus on the employer side, on the business side. I think we've come to the point that we recognize that, well, if we don't include the worker side, the representation of unions in these processes, it's not going to work. Because you know, workers' rights, it's a two-way process. So we need to involve both sides, and of course, in that sense, also our collaboration with the ILO, with the International Labour Organization, is very much key. And Comrade James already mentioned the ILO Convention 122. In the course of the last year, Nigeria has ratified several ILO conventions pertaining to labor migration. I mean, so we're talking about just the last 3-4 years, and that says a lot about the commitment, but also the impact. I think that all of this collaboration has had, you know, and going forward, that means better protection for workers, for migrant workers in Nigeria, but also hopefully more collaboration between Nigerian unions and unions in the destination countries, because that's also something that we want to support. At the end of the day, it's not just the information you get here, but also knowing that when you get to the other side, you can access the support of unions over there, and supporting those networks, also supporting ITUC Africa, for us is also part of that strategy. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandra. I will talk to Comrade James, who, as I said, I consider the subject matter expert. Now, in terms of policy reforms, what do you believe are the reforms that are urgently needed for the protection of migrant civil rights in the Nigerian community?
Well, thank you, Wale, for your question. Beyond the particular policy, as far back as 1948, the UN Declaration of Human Rights rooted that labor rights are human rights. Therefore, any law or policy that is out there to protect human rights should automatically protect labor rights. But when we talk about policy environment, we think that there are urgently needed policies and approaches that should be in place to help to protect labor migrant rights. For instance, one of the things that really lead to exploitation in the migration sphere is employment process, recruitment process. And this is where the fair recruitment and its principle must be in the forefront, whereby elimination of recruitment fee and ensuring that fair and ethical recruitment practices are in place is a priority, because the exploitation of a migrant worker begins from the point of the employment of the migrant workers. And what are those principles around fair recruitment? Non-recruitment fee, understanding the contract language, signing a contract before departure, and also knowing the nature of job, or also having information about the country of destination. And that is where the Nigerian Labour Congress has partnered with the ITUC to develop what we call the Migrant Recruitment Advisor, the MRA, which is an online-based tool to help potential migrants and migrants to make informed decisions on regular migration. Another thing is issue around guaranteeing the minimum wage for all workers without discrimination, including migrant workers. Because the OSS of minimum wage is to protect those workers that are on the floor, who are weak and who are vulnerable. And if you minimum wage are universally applied, we find out that the situation of migrants and their families will also be better. Also, universal coverage of social protection practices and policies, where migrants have access to social protection, have access to universal coverage. It is key. The question of abolishing some systems that are really dehumanizing migrant workers. For instance, in the GCC country, we talk of the kafala system, where the migrant becomes a property of an employer. These are policies that we should aggressively pursue. We should also ensure safe and decent working conditions. Because that is one thing, like Dr. Emeka said in the NLC study, that we find out that most migrants in Nigeria are working under unsafe health and working conditions. These policies must be in place to guarantee the labor rights of migrant workers. And when we talk about migrants, one thing we should be aware of is not just Nigerian migrants that are emigrating. We are also talking about migrants that are in Nigeria. Because studies have shown, according to Dr. Emeka, that Africa migrates within the African continent. But one thing that is a miss is at the point at which the trade unions are very vibrant in Nigeria is that the government is more interested in the economic side. That is why they put more emphasis on issues around diaspora, but not on the labor migrant. And forgetting that diaspora, those who are diaspora today who can make investment, we are at a point in vulnerable situation. Therefore, our emphasis must be how to protect the vulnerable migrant.
Thank you, Comrade, for that. Let me also use this opportunity to address the audience and our participants that there will be opportunity for questions and comments immediately after the panel. So I will move on to Dr. Sandra, which representing the government side here. I will be integrating among the users. I want to ask, what practical tools do you provide in the MRC to empower young workers before they migrate?
Thank you very much, everybody. I'm very comfortable with the needs of the union leaders because we know each other. Anytime that union and government are cooperating together, union is always attacking and government is always providing answers, responses to their questions. But let me answer your question. At the MRC, we provide what we call information education tools to young Nigerians who wanted to migrate to work outside the country, and also migrants from other nations that come to Nigeria to work. For example, the ministry also have developed So the ministry also have developed what we call the pre-departure and orientation manual. This manual is used to give a kind of orientation to Nigerians, young Nigerians who have secured job overseas, and the employer who is taking them out to bring them to the Migrant Resource Center, where we put them through, for example, for them to be able to identify indicators of forced labor. For instance, if you are migrating from Nigeria to go and work outside the country, and you have gotten the contract of employment, which is provided by the Ministry of Labour under this pre-departure seminar, then by the time you arrive at the job country, if your principal or maybe your employer is requesting for you to give him or her your international passport, it's a red flag that the person is trying to take you to condition of forced labor. And again, we also expose them, if you're a migrant worker traveling abroad, how do you assess Medicare? Also, how we assess whether public or private transportation system in that country. Issues of languages, culture, and then how to abide by the conduct of employment. All of those things are contained in the pre-departure manual that will be developed by the Ministry of Labour and Employment. Because we need to educate that person on what is needed when the person goes abroad. It's country specific. For example, Mr. James mentioned the issue of the GIZ country where we talk about the Kabbalah system. If there are domestic workers who are going to work, let's say in Saudi Arabia for instance, you have to give them a very positive orientation. Issues of religion, we have to come to play in that area. And in case if your right is abused, how to navigate that issue by reporting to Nigerian authority to give them the number of Nigerian Immigration Service attached to the embassy in those foreign countries, and even consular officers as well. So let me give a brief example. Like in 2018, when private employment agencies were recruiting Nigerians, young Nigerians to work in the GIZ countries, a lot of challenges. We saw a lot of challenges because the military was inundated with complaints. For example, the contract they signed that the military saw before they traveled, by the time they got to those countries, the contract was changed. For example, we have had incidents of youth that called us that he signed a contract as an agricultural worker. By the time he arrived in Saudi Arabia, he was put to be uprooting trees, which is very, very difficult for him to do. So in such case, the ministry have to move immediately because government is also playing the role of regulatory framework. And government is also out there to protect the rights of migrant workers, be it Nigerians or other nationalities in Nigeria. So government have to put the right mechanism in place. At that point, government have to stop recruitment to the GIZ country. And as I speak to you now, government have done a lot of things to ensure that more rights of Nigerians are protected. So this is what we do in the MRC. Everyone can be very key and also build their capacity through the pre-departure ceremony. And unfortunately, the GIZ, that is the partner of the Federal Ministry of Labour and Employment, have also developed fact sheets on the work and education in 18 foreign countries as well. In our last technical working committee meeting, which was held, I think, early this month of August, we have reviewed those documents, and then we are planning for the validation on the 19th of September. By the time those documents are validated, we are going to be, we're going to publish it. I want to also keep them in the MRC that any of our clients that work in can also pick the copy. So this is what we are doing to ensure that Nigerian migrant workers. Yeah, we also have skill acquisition centers of the Federal Ministry of Labour and Employment in the 6 geopolitical zones. And the ministry also has also established what we call the job centers in line with the ILO Convention 088 to promote employment services. In the 6 geopolitical zones, I think we have 24 job centers in Nigeria today. And currently, GIZ is supporting the Federal Ministry of Labour and Employment through the action project to build capacities of military labor staff to be able to dispense services to Nigerian youth. And also, we also use the instrument of the Migrant Resource Center to train Nigerians, build capacity in areas of professional trainings. By the time those trainings are carried out, they are supported with the startup tools for them to be able to start their business at home. Thank you.
Thank you. I want to follow up with a question to Bello that is related to what Dr. Nasi just contributed. How can unions and CSOs and government institutions collaborate more effectively in advocating for migrant workers' rights? So how can the unions, the government institutions and CSOs collaborate more on this topic effectively?
Yeah, thank you, Wale. I think I will take it from where Sandra stopped about previous focus on business and then now we are paying attention to workers. If you look at the African continent, Nigerian businesses are thriving around Africa. Dangote is investing in Zambia, is investing everywhere. So it's showing, and also there's also the African continental free trade, which shows that trade is also going to come up, manufacturing is expanding. So people need to focus on the people's side, on the worker side. So it's important that we expand that space through more collaboration with civil society organizations, governments, and unions, like the example she gave of Belgium. I think it's quite hard of a long year of dominance is our own. Instead of seeing union as a collective, it's personal to us. It took time and long years of development and training and capacity for people to understand that the union is a broad space for engagement, it's a broad space for fighting, it's a broad space for making change. So, and there are civil society organizations like Dr. Bello of capacity that will assist unions in building the capacity of unions in different areas where migrant workers are prevalent in our country. Now, about government, in fact, there's a third leg because I work in a tripartite structure. And it's very critical when we're talking about this because the world of work is a world that is standing on three legs: employer, government, and labor. And so, when you are talking about the right of workers, employers are critical. When you are talking about right of workers, a lot has to be done by the regulator, the government, in ensuring that the provisions of the law are not violated with impunity. In fact, it is expected that where there are no unions, government must be able to provide for the welfare and the security of every citizen, including foreign nationals. So, but what makes it more solid is that there's an organization of the people themselves that can stand when these rights are trampled upon. And that's why the union and civil society organizations come in to create the necessary balance. So what is important that unions work with civil society organizations who have already built knowledge and competence and network on these issues, not just nationally, but also internationally. I gave the example of South Africa. Because the Textile Workers Union in Nigeria work very closely with the Textile Workers Union in South Africa. When every union in South Africa kept news, SATU did a campaign to defend the right of migrant workers. And they exchanged with the Nigerian union what they did. They did t-shirts, they did rallies, where even SATU could not organize a single event. And how did that happen? It's because of collaboration. Because the SATU union and the Textile Workers Union in Nigeria had a long year of association. I was part of an exchange program. As an organizer in the union, I worked in South Africa for 3 months in the union office. The organizers came here to Nigeria to work here, so they understand the dynamic. So that kind of exchange will further bolster the impetus within the union to fight for every citizen, for every worker. And so it's very key. The other area is also what is being done. I think Sandra or James mentioned that in terms of not just building local network, building regional network, and building international network, because it's a two-way movement. Actually, South Africa is in, I think there's a network, ATU network, whatever it is, we can speak on that, where unions within the region come together to share experience. And it's not just about the union, there are civil society actors, and there are also media practitioners, because this information can then get to the public, while unions also get capacitated and to focus on the specific challenges that migrant workers face. Like you said, yes, we can say, we can argue at one level to say workers' rights are migrant rights, but there are specific issues that migrants confront. Issues around travel, issues around documentation. If you're a local worker, you won't face those challenges. So that also requires a lot of networking and support. We can't solve it, union can solve it, but I can tap on the shoulder based on the network and the working together that we do. That we have this group of workers who are from the so, they have issues with their papers, and at the level of government, they can do that kind of work.
Yes. Yes, it's on now. Okay, I just wanted to, how many people are online?
Can you watch display? Online.
Oh, okay. Well, anyway, in any case, I think what's important is that we mentioned that all of this information that we're talking about can be very easily found online. We all have Facebook pages. The Migrant Resource Center has a Facebook page, as well as a Nigerian with an N, German with an N, Center. Yes, and you can also reach out to us for individual counseling on all of those pages. I just thought, I don't want to take over from Wole, but using my prerogative. I think considering time, it's 20 to 1, I think we should give the opportunity to the people from the floor to ask questions, and so that there's a more, because at the end of the day, we should be responding to their questions, not just the questions we thought you might be interested in. So maybe we can proceed like that. What do you think?
I'm in agreement.
All right, good.
So, in order not to move away, because it's a very comprehensive and long discussion, so in order not to move away our participants, I think maybe we should take one more question from the panel while you are preparing your questions too. So, I will go to Community Remy. So after Community Remy, we come back to the participants. So whatever question you have, maybe you have like outlined it, then we take it after our question. There is this conversation that has come up on domestic workers, for example, and we know that domestic workers are not especially unionized, they belong to the informal sector. So, and I know that the FES is also working very closely with the informal workers organization, Federation of Informal Workers of Nigeria. So, how can FES help bridge the gap between the unions and the informal sector, where most young migrants work?
Thank you. Thank you, Ole. At the FES, like you said, we support not only the formal sector workers represented by the NLC and the TUC, we also support the informal sector workers. We have supported FEMON since its inauguration 15 years ago. And the support we give majorly is in the area of capacity building, research as the needs may be, dialogue, and then facilitating exchange between the union and politicians, policy makers to get the voice of informal sector in the policy space. What we have also done with them, and I agree so much that, you know that out of every 10 new jobs now, 9 are in the informal sector. Every 10 new jobs, we have 9 in the informal sector. And they are literally by young people. And so, 2 years ago, we did a series of dialogue sessions and capacity building activities with young people in the informal sector. Because the issue around interest of young people in union is something. It's like in the formal sector also. young people seem to not be interested in unions because they see unions as too formal, restrictive. And the same thing is also happening in the informal sector. And so the union spoke to us, and we did a series of activities on capacity building, leadership training for young people. And also, another problem in the informal sector is you see organizations, I think it's not only in the informal sector, and the problem of old men holding union positions for limited time, where there are no, where there are no time frame. Like, so you are the chair, you are chair for life. And so this was a concern for the organization. And we helped to facilitate these dialogue sessions. They are difficult sometimes, but there are things that need to be done. In all, I think that the issue around the empowerment of young people, especially in all sectors of our nation, and then the fact that the informal sector reality is here with us. So the issue around how do we make life better in that sector, the issue around how do you guarantee livelihood, how do you make sure that work, decent work and safety and freedom from harassment. And then how do you also build solidarity, because that's also the discussions globally. Solidarity economy. If government cannot help you, how can we help ourselves? Through cooperatives is also part of what we are doing with the Federation of Informal Sector Workers. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Please let us appreciate what you do. I will turn now to our participants. Thank you for your patience. I don't know, do we have questions, comments? Yes.
Thank you for the second form of this workshop today. Everybody is welcome. So I will start with that. My name is Comrade Esosa. I work with the GIZ-ZME program. I want to say a very big thank you to the panelists for a very robust discussion. I think part of my question has been answered by some Rita already, but I want to get the perspective from the government side. So I will be addressing my question specifically to Dr. Nancy. Sandra mentioned the issue of inclusion of youth, and from Rita, talked about youth coming forward. So now my question would be, what strategies can the government employ to amplify the voices of the youth and ensure that their concerns are heard by policy makers? How can we ensure the inclusion and representation of youth-led initiatives in addressing the issue of protection of migrants, so that they are not only seen, but their voices are heard? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sosa, Comrade Sosa. Like I said before, government is out there to ensure the protection of rights of every citizen, be it migrant workers or not. And government does this through policy formulation and implementation. For example, a section of the National Policy on Migration talks about youth inclusiveness. It also talked about youth responsive inclusion. Now, government is very key because in government is very aware of the protection of the right of the youth. Because if you look at Nigeria today, the youth are more in population, more in numbers than the elderly. And that has been an asset to the government. Government must do everything to protect the interests of the youth. If you look at other parts of the world, they are experiencing aging. But in Nigeria particularly, the youth, we are experiencing burgeoning youth population. And we know the youth are very, agitated. They are looking for what can keep them busy, like community spoken. Now, government is doing that through policy formulation. We have different policies that will make the voice of the youth to be heard. For example, we have the national policy on migration, like I mentioned. The focus, the objective is to protect the rights of migrant workers. 2, we also have the national employment policy. Why we have the national employment policy, the NEP, is also to protect, to create an open environment for job creation for the youth. Because if you don't create job for the youth might maybe indulging in some activities that is, dangerous to their well-being. So government need to do all of those things. And government has factored in employment issues. Also, skills development is very key. If you look at the Nigerian economy today, it's not that job is not being created. Job is being created because some people doesn't have the requisite skill to take those jobs. Because we are in a changing world where the world of work is changing every day. So government have taken cognizance of all of those issues, and that's why government is formulating policies in this regard. And government is also collaborating with social partners, NLC, Employers Association, the government, to also carry out information campaign, to also discuss issues that will bring the youth on board. And also collaborating with international partners like GIZ, ILO, IOM, to also build capacity of the youth through vocational training. Of course, the agreement that the federal government was signed with GIZ in 2017. And in that regard, GIZ have supported the ministry in building capacity of Nigerian youth. And a lot of them have been trained. A lot of them now have their own personal businesses in Nigeria. Even to the extent that if you ask some of them whether they want to migrate, they will tell you no. I have something that is keeping me busy today. So government will continue to interface. In the Ministry of Youth, you can see what the federal government is doing. Appointment of a youth minister. Now we are also having a youth confab. It's because government value the contribution of youth, and that's why government is doing that. And also the Ministry of Labour is also a member of that committee. We are discussing how we can include the youth, how the voice of the youth can be heard, and the Ministry of Youth is already doing that. Thank you. I think that answered the question.
Maybe just to add, because we are citizens. And his government and their government is to say that the question of inclusion comes with some measure of deliberateness.
Yes.
You have to be deliberate about it. I've seen the way it works, and that's what motivates me to say this. You can't have UK inclusion. It's important that education is key, employment generation is key, skill development is key. But the young people too must be where those decisions are made. It's clear, if they are not there, we can't have the benefit of the combustible energy, the intellectual energy of our young people. In the past, we want to learn Nigeria before 31, 35. Many of the leaders of yesterday reached the peak of their career below 30. Now we are having young people in their late 20s, in their early 30s, still struggling for jobs. So I think it's important to be deliberate, to say that in power positions, in policy positions, 20% of young people will be there. How? You have to think about it. 25 people will be there. And women representation, 10%, 20% will be there. How? We can discuss about that. Without that deliberateness, we won't go nowhere. And I'm motivated to see this because of the experience I had with the Textile Workers Union. In the early 2000s, that union is very dominated, that industry is very dominated. There were discussions inside of the union that women are not there in employment, so we don't need them in leadership position. And Commonwealth said no, we need to do an affirmative action. And so in 2000, conference of that union, an affirmative action was done, and it became mandatory that every election, whether a woman is there or not, so long as there is a woman in employment in a particular factory, that woman is a member of high school. Let me tell you, 15 years later, a woman from Textile Union became a member of the leadership of the Nigerian-German workers. It should have been possible without that deliberateness to say, look, we need to develop the structure. Yes, we have that. Exactly. We have that structure because that also empowered them, encouraged them to fight beyond the affirmative action position. So it's important that when we discuss about young people, about youth, we need to make that demand that young people need to be on the table where decisions are made.
What you said, government recognized that, and that's why the Institute of Development was established. And now, under the government of President Bola, the Ministry of Youth constituted a committee made up of all the different FEAs that have mandate on issues of youth, to invite the youth at the senatorial districts for them, for their voice to be heard, for them to come up with what they think government can do for them in terms of inclusivity. And that's why this conference is being organized. As we speak now, members of the committee are in different senatorial zones, trying to organize kind of conferences to hear how their ability can be better used in the context of Nigeria today. So I think government recognize that the importance of the youth. Government can never do that because the youth are the future generation of this country, whether you like it or not. So that's why government is starting that. So
I think we agree on that. I think we agree on that. What I'm saying concretely is to say in the next 4 years, you want to see 25% of fake members.
They have come on this confirm.
Exactly. So young people, it is up to you to push. Yeah.
Thank you, Comrade. I think that was quite an interesting question. We will move forward with questions from participants, but I think we should take all the questions at once so that like 4 questions now. So let us know only 1, 2, 3, 4. So we will take all the 4 questions and it will be noted by the panelists and the respondents to. So, number 1.
Good afternoon.
Please let us know your name and the union representing.
My name is Benita Obiazu. I'm representing National Academic Staff Union of Educational and Associated Institutions, NASU. So my question is based on trust and confidence between the migrants and the citizens, because we are talking about the workers' rights in ECOWAS. I want to know, or let me say, I want to center my opinion or question this way. When the migrant is migrating from another country to Nigeria specifically, there's this issue of job insecurity within the citizens, that this migrant is migrating to take out my job. So there's this, because the Assistant General Secretary mentioned the issue of cohabitating. So there's this fear of losing job. So how do we tackle that fear of the citizens losing their job because of the migrants? Secondly, the migrants are being scared of coming out. Maybe they didn't enter in a right way, the documents needed. So they won't have this confidence to come out to speak out for their rights because they didn't enter properly. So how do we tackle that issue so that those things can be settled? Then my contribution again, and then issue of migrants coming, this fear of insecurity, relating migration to insecurity, because people be feeling migrants are the people maybe causing insecurity. How do we station migrants agents, maybe in a border, that can create awareness, educate them before coming into the country that they want to reside or work in? These are my 3 basic questions to get clarification. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So, I hope the questions are clear. Number 2.
Good afternoon, comrades. My name is Ajiba Bebamidele, representing Nigeria Civil Service Union, NCSU. My question has been partially answered. If I was talking about migrants migrating from one country to another, from Nigeria to Ghana, Ethiopia, and thereabouts, I want to ask a practical question. Must Nigerian youth eventually travel out? Yes, people say freedom of movement. If we have freedom of movement, yes. If we are going to be travelers, we must travel out for pleasure, enjoyment, freedom. You are okay, your fatherland is flourishing, you go there, entertain yourself, and come back home. But Nigeria case is vice versa. You see Nigerian youth outside there, they will be washing dead body, shivering in cold. Common in Ghana here. I can remember sometimes ago we developed Ghana Must Go. When Ghana was overpopulated in Nigeria, we want to set them back. That's the essence of Ghana Must Go. But now, in Ghana, they are preparing to get Nigeria Must Go. Why? Our government, labor leaders, please do something more Nigeria youth travelers.
Thank you. I do that we get very appropriate response to that.
Of a truth, the informal sector is very, very large in any economy, whether you like it or not, and they are contributing substantially making development in any country. The informal sector in Nigeria is not regulated, and in most countries of the world, I don't think the informal sector, the government is doing something to see how this informal sector can be regulated. For example, there is a time that a survey was carried out on how to regulate this informal sector by government. What we noticed was that most people in the informal sector believe that regularizing the informal sector will bring a whole lot of challenges to them in terms of taxation. Somebody who told us that government want to tax and that's why government is coming to tax with them. So government is trying to do that by establishing union like a secretary, to make mention. And then we have the Federation of Informal Organization. So it is only through that means that we can regularize the informal sector. But outside that, for now, the informal sector in Nigeria is not regularized. And a lot of people are in the informal sector. If you look at the barber who established his own barbing shop, it's in the informal sector. The woman who is frying akara at the junction is also part of the informal sector. The person who is doing well, doing a lot of, all of them are part of the informal sector, and many of them, they are contributing to the gross domestic product of this country, whether you like it or not. Even it's on record that the informal sector contributes almost 60% of the GDP. So there's need for government to regularize the informal sector, but it's something that will be done gradually. It's not something that we can achieve at the go. So Ademola also talked about issues of discrimination between Nigerians who are working with expatriates, who are working in foreign companies. Yes, Ademola, I agree with you. We have received a lot of complaints from Nigerians. But what I want to say here is that many Nigerians are not aware of the provisions of the labor laws. If they are aware, by the time you are employed in an organization and you notice that that's not against you, the best thing to do is to report to the Federal Ministry of Labor and Employment or the NLC. I will give you an example. There is a company in, I don't want to mention the name, there's a company in Nasarawa State, in Latvia to be precise. The company is operating two cafeterias. One canteen for the foreign workers, another canteen for the Nigerians. Now, a Nigerian raised the issue, went to the labor, you know, labor have what we call the state labor offices in the 36 states of the Federation, including FCT, where you can go and lodge complaint if you're a migrant worker or if you're a national. Now, that worker in that company went and lodged a complaint in our state labor office in Nasarawa, and the company suspended him, and then they had to terminate his appointment. And the matter was escalated to the headquarters. My director then, who just retired January or December last year, was the one that handled the case, and I was privileged to follow him. By the time we got there, the company, we told the company first and foremost, before we can discuss with you, after we are ready to them, you have to reinstate that guy first and pay him the backlog of the salaries that is owing before we can negotiate, we can talk. They did that. And after that, we noticed that the company is being fronted by a former governor of that same state. And the former governor tried to influence the Ministry of Labor to stop that action and rejected it. And this is the problem we have in Nigeria. Most of the companies are talking about a big man syndrome. Somebody with a very no big name is behind those companies. I will give you, if I want, as a neutral labor, I want to, if I can, I'll give you a lot of instances. Now, the government tried to influence that decision of the ministry. Even the deputy coordinator of immigration was sent to the ministry, refused. And we told them they have to merge both the two cafeteria, and it was done. And today that officer is still working in that organization. And now they have one canteen. There is a time we went for labor inspection in Abuja here, in one of the construction companies, where they are abusing the right of Nigerians. And when we got there, they got the company workers who are expatriates. They released their dogs. But they don't want to allow the neutral labor staff to enter. Because that's why we carry out labor inspections. And we came back to the office and reported the matter. And that time, the minister called the SSS. And then we went to two SSS officers who are armed. They have guns in their, in their shirts and whatever. And when we got there, they did the same thing. And they first of all killed the two dogs. In our presence, they shot the two dogs, killed them. And that same day, that officer of that company was deported from Nigeria. So people need to report. If you don't report these abuses, the ministry cannot be everywhere. So we don't know. So there's need. He talks about the awareness creation. Yes, it's true that most of the activities of the ministry is we are lacking behind in terms of the awareness campaign. But we are doing our best. If you look at the policy we are talking about, all of them are on the internet. If you Google the National Policy on Migration, you see it there. Google the National Employment Policy, you see it there. So we should try to leverage on the use of the internet. We can get a lot of resources for the ministry in that regard as well. I think I've answered all of you.
I don't know, do we still have other contribution on the questions?
Hello, my contribution on this question is first to the question, must Nigeria youth travel out? The answer is yes and it's no. Yes, because migration is a human right. And we shouldn't see migration from negative perspective. It's not all factors that push migration may not necessarily be negative factors. You have a right to seek employment outside Nigeria and go and work the way Sandra is working in Nigeria today. But what we are saying, is that migration should be safe, orderly, and regular. You should make informed decision to migrate. And while you migrate, your rights as a human being should be respected. Even irrespective of your status. Whether you fall into irregular status, your rights should be respected. We must understand one thing, that the thin line between regular and irregular status is thin. You would have migrated as a regular migrant, but you can fall into irregular status. And that is why we are saying that states should comply with the GCM objectives. What are GCM objectives? There are UN coordinated objectives that states have keyed into to ensure that migration governance is safe, orderly, and regular. And one of such is availability of regular pathways. If you are in an irregular status, it is the responsibility of the state to ensure that your status becomes regular, including amnesty, ensuring that people who are in irregular status are given opportunity to register with government agencies like the immigration and then become regular. We are not criminalizing migration. There is no illegal migration. Nobody that migrated is illegal. You could have been an irregular or undocumented status. So we must begin to change the narrative of the populist government. That goes to the issue of competition. There is a growing active migration sentiment that even politicians are using to win election today, like American First. What does that mean? Drive out migrants. That is not what the world is all about. because migration has its own benefits. Yes. Therefore, we must ensure that migration is governed in a way that is beneficial to all. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. And last was the final take on these questions. I want to use this medium to appreciate first our participants for their patience, and I also let us applaud ourselves for our strength. I also want to appreciate our panelists, our keynote speaker for their delivery. I think on behalf of all of us, I can say they did an excellent job. I'm speaking for all of us. If I say that, I assume. Alright. So, we appreciate you for coming, and this is a workshop to commemorate the International Youth Day. It is also a webinar that we organize and plan monthly. So we still have another one that is coming up this month, because in August we are having two. So on the 28th of August, this is the as a 1 p.m. we are having another webinar on skills development. If you are interested, you can join us for that webinar. We will welcome you. And just as Sandra also mentioned the other time, we also have social media channels like the Nigerian-German Center. You can follow it now. You can follow us on Facebook, Nigerian with N, German with N. So Nigerian-German Center. We are also on YouTube. We also have the Migrant Resource Center. You can find out on YouTube, you can find out on LinkedIn. If you follow these channels, you can be assured of first-hand information on some of the topics that we have discussed. And to people who ask about the skills development centers, that where are they, job opportunities and all that, if you follow us, you will be carried along with some of the activities of our partner and of our own center, Centers for Migration and Development. So, I believe that we have come to the end of this important event. We appreciate you for coming. Most importantly, we appreciate our panelists and speakers. And I want to also especially appreciate the crew members for their technical commitment. Thank you. And my colleagues from the Nigerian-German Center, Michael, Victor, and Exercise for longer here. We appreciate you for coming. Thank you very much for your support too. I don't know, I think we should end with the Union Solidarity song. We will not start with it. Thank you.
United.